Sesame Street, normally seen at 4 o'clock this afternoon, will not be presented today. At that time, Channel 13 will be
The time is 6 a.m. on September 11th. We're looking at the day crew just beginning to assemble. Manning the administration building in the background. These are some of the state police personnel.
From Rochester, New York, WXXI presents live coverage of hearings conducted by the New York State Special Commission on Attica.
Good morning. I'm Mitchell Krause. This studio of Channel 21, WXXI in Rochester, approximately 50 miles from Attica State Correctional Institution, is the other members of the commission who will be introduced by Dean McKay subsequently will be sitting throughout these hearings, and in fact they have been meeting since their establishment back in the middle of November to hear up to 3,000 witnesses representing members of the prison population, the correctional population, reporters, observers, those expert on criminal justice and affairs. And all of these witnesses and their testimony has been sifted, and for today's opening session we'll be presenting a portion of that as part of the New York State Special Commission on Attica's first day. In fact, to preview what you're likely to hear today after the opening remarks and the description of the commission by Dean McKay and the introduction of Arthur L. Lyman, who is the general counsel of this committee, there will be background on conditions inside the prison, the nature of the prison population, and other lifestyle aspects by two members of the commission, David Addison and Maureen Barton. Then a former inmate will look at life inside Attica, William E. Jackson. And during the afternoon, the Deputy Consul General, Charles L. Willis, will appear. He and Mr. Jackson will present a film of life inside Attica, what it looks like to live inside that facility. Winding up the day, we are told, we will hear from a present inmate of the institution, Robert Matthews, number 26951, who will talk about life for a resident of the ghetto now inside the Attica institution. We might add here, as the days go by, that we'll be filling you in on various aspects of what goes on behind the scenes here. There's a large contingent from the press of this state and throughout the country present in the studio, as well as invited guests. In addition, we'll attempt to give you a preview of subsequent days before the commission, although the commission has been chary about providing information on those coming up for fear that if there is too much publicity, is about ready to begin the proceedings this morning, which will last until approximately 12:30. There'll be an afternoon session beginning at 2. So let us now go to the witnesses and to the commission, and here is Dean Robert McKay of the New York University School of Law, who is chairman of the New York State Special Commission on Attica.
I'm Robert McKay. There are 8 other members of the Commission. Thanks to the marvels of the electronics age, we are in your home today. The jet age has not worked quite as well today. As you may have noticed, 3 members of the Commission have just arrived at the very beginning of the proceedings, and 1 is still en route. As he comes in, I will, of course, be glad to introduce him to you. The 8 who are with us today, beginning from my right, are Walter Rothschild, chairman of the board of the Urban Coalition and formerly president of Abraham and Strauss. Mrs. Amalia Guerrero, president of the Society of Friends of Puerto Rico. Bishop Edwin B. Broderick, Roman Catholic Bishop of Albany. Mrs. Dorothy Wadsworth, an active participant in community projects in Monroe County. Mr. Robert L. Carter, former general counsel of the NAACP, now a practitioner in New York. Mr. Burke Marshall, Deputy Dean of the Yale Law School, and former Assistant Attorney General in charge of civil rights under the late Robert F. Kennedy. And Mr. William Wilbanks, a doctoral candidate at the School of Criminal Justice at the State University of New York. Our absent member who will be with us today is Mr. Amos Hennix, a former inmate himself and currently Executive Director of Reality House, a drug rehabilitation program in Manhattan. The Commission members were asked to serve by the 5 principal judicial officers of the state of New York, including Chief Judge Stanley Gold of the Court of Appeals and the presiding justices of the 4 appellate divisions. These hearings mark the beginning of the Commission's report on Attica. We intend to make such further reports to the public in writing or through the media as we believe are necessary to present the full truth about Attica. The first phase of our hearings will describe the conditions at Attica prior to September 9th, from the point of view of the inmates and the correction officers. We will then hear testimony on the actual events of September 9 and through September 13, including the decisions made by the authorities and their consequences. In the course of our investigation, we have received the willing cooperation of thousands of people. This is as it should be, because the events at Attica compel all of us to ask searching questions about the realities of our prisons in accomplishing their professed task. The problems are not new. The first meeting, for example, of what is now known as the American Correctional Association in 1870, more than 100 years ago, set forth the following goals for our prisons. First, reformation, not vindictive suffering, should be the purpose of the penal treatment of prisoners. Second, prison discipline should be such as to gain the will of the prisoner and conserve his self-respect. Third, the aim of the prison should be to make industrious, make sure that there is an opportunity for effective rehabilitation. As we listen to the testimony at these hearings, we as citizens must judge whether those goals are a reality at Attica 100 years later. No less is at stake than the well-being of our society. We must decide whether our commitment is to vengeance or to rehabilitation. We must determine whether all that we can do is to punish for acts which cannot be undone, or whether our institutions can also serve to prevent repetition of those and similar acts. We must answer honestly whether the Atticas of this world support our efforts to reduce crime, or whether they exist at great public expense only to provide sterile confinement of both inmates and correction officers. 43 citizens died at Attica, and more than 100 others were wounded or injured in the retaking of the institution. As private citizens, we view our appointment as a solemn commitment to tell the public the truth about the conditions in our penal institutions as represented by Attica, and about the tragic consequences of that institution in September 1971. For the first phase of these hearings, we have requested our staff to present to the public a cross-section of Attica inmates and correction officers whose testimony will reflect the diverse attitudes of and the pressures on inmates and correction officers. To introduce the testimony, I wish to introduce to you Arthur L. Lyman, General Counsel to the Commission, and I speak for all members of the Commission in saying that he and the staff he has assembled have done a superb job in assembling the facts that we now wish to present to the public.
Thank you, Dean. I would like to, before the testimony begins, outline for the public the scope of the investigation undertaken by this Commission pursuant to the mandate which you described. This Commission has sought to interview every person with first-hand knowledge of the facts concerning Attica and concerning the events of September 1971. To assist us in this task, we assembled a staff of approximately 30 persons, including lawyers, investigators, and experts such as pathologists, ballistics experts, and a psychiatrist. We were helped in our task by a corps of part-time investigators who helped us in interviewing approximately 3,000 persons. These citizens whom we have interviewed include over 1,500 inmates who were at Attica or are still at Attica, hundreds of correction officers who work at Attica, the employees and administrators of Attica, townspeople of the town of Attica, hundreds of state troopers and National Guardsmen, as well as sheriff's deputies who are called to duty at Attica, medical personnel who treated the wounded, pathologists who autopsied the dead, members of the Citizens Observers Committee which participated in the negotiations at Attica, officials of the Department of Corrections and their staff, and other state officials and decision makers, including the governor and the governor's staff. We have also spoken to wives of correction officers and to wives of inmates in our effort to determine the frustrations that have affected all people who both work and are confined at Attica. We are familiar faces at the Attica institution. Members of my staff have practically lived there. We have also assembled and examined a large volume of documentary and photographic material, including ballistics and autopsy reports, audio tapes, videotapes, and motion pictures, which were taken by the authorities during the period from September 9 through September 13. The Commission is now prepared to begin its presentation to the public of the facts and circumstances developed in this investigation concerning Attica. The Commission has asked me to read the following rules and procedures which it has adopted to govern this hearing. First, witnesses will be questioned by Commission counsel and the members of the Commission. Second, pursuant to law, each witness will be afforded the opportunity to make a brief statement in addition to responding to questions. Third, any person who during the course of these hearings may have been inadvertently mentioned in a derogatory manner will be afforded a fair opportunity to respond prior to the adjournment of our hearings. And fourth, all witnesses have been instructed that in order to protect the rights of each individual who may be connected with the events at Attica, witnesses shall not be permitted to identify any person in connection with any incident which may be deemed to be unlawful. These hearings will be followed by such other proceedings, including a written report, as the Commission may deem appropriate. The witnesses have been selected by the Commission and the staff to present fairly both the facts and divergent attitudes discovered by the Commission in this investigation. If any person believes that he has material information concerning the events at Attica which has not been presented, then we respectfully request that such persons contact the Commission at its offices in either New York City or in Rochester. I would like to begin our presentation with a historical note. Attica was the first major prison for males built in New York in over 100 years. It was constructed in 1930, and it was constructed in part as a response to the demands for reform of prison conditions which had led to riots in both Dannemora and Auburn in the late 1920s. Then, too, there were reform commissions established to explore the conditions giving rise to insurrections. The newspaper comments which the Commission has asked me to read concerning the opening of Attica are most revealing. First, I would read excerpts from an article which appeared in the New York Times on January 22, 1930, more than 40 years ago. It reads, "If the succession of prison mutinies in this state have had no other effect, they have directed an exceptional amount of attention to the new state prison under construction at Attica. When the first outbreak occurred at Auburn on July 28, with the almost simultaneous revolt at Dannemora, the opening rush of comments indicated that even among state officials and prison reform bodies, there may have been forgotten that a new prison at Attica was contemplated. Whatever may be the outcome of that agitation, the immediate and practical answer to the convict revolts has been the new Attica prison." The second article appeared on August 2, 1931 in the New York Times at the time that Attica's doors were first opening. It was headlined, I have the copy here, "Attica Prison to be Convicts' Paradise." It reads in part, "Condemned by the Wickersham Commission for its maintenance of Auburn and Clinton prisons, New York State will have an answer to charges of inhumane penal conditions when the new Wyoming State prison opens at Attica within the next few months with its full quota of 2,000 convicts." Said to be the last word in modern prison construction, the new unit in the state's penal system will do away with such traditions as convict bunks, mess hall lockstep, bullpens, and even locks and keys. In their places will be beds with springs and mattresses, a cafeteria with food under glass, recreation rooms, and an automatic signal system by which convicts will notify guards of their presence in their cells. Doors will be operated by compressed air, sunlight will stream into cells, and every prisoner will have an individual radio. And Atticans take as much pride in the fact that Wyoming is the latest in the so-called humane prisons as in the fact that their village has been selected for its site. Almost any citizen can tell the transient that in the new unit, costing $7 million when completed, nothing has been spared to assure decent living conditions for its inmates. I would like to begin now with a member of my staff, a Deputy General Counsel, David Addison, who, with Miss Barden, who is sitting on my right, has made a study of pertinent statistics pertaining to the prisons and to Attica, the prisons in New York I'm referring to. Mr. Addison, have you prepared a map of the prisons in New York State for adult males over the age of 21?
Yes, I have, Mr. Lyon.
For the Love of Art will not be seen on STS Day because of this live coverage of the New York State Special Commission on Attica. For the Love of Art will be rebroadcast on Friday at 12:20 p.m.
Over the age of 21, convicted of a felony in New York State can be sent. There are three types of such institutions. maximum security institution, a medium security institution, and a minimum security institution.
Now, could you describe for the public what the differences are between maximum security institutions, medium security institutions, and minimum security institutions?
A maximum security institution, as indicated by our black squares, is the most secure institution in New York. It's characterized by inside cells with single cell occupancy. This type of institution provides for constant supervision of inmates and requires that they be locked in their cells by 5 or 6 o'clock every day.
Now, this is the description by the Department of Corrections of what constitutes a maximum security prison, am I correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, what is the difference between a maximum security institution and a medium security institution?
The medium security institutions, as indicated by our diagonal lines on our map, are characterized by a different housing requirement. There are more hours of flexibility than in the maximum security institution, and inmates receive frequent observation rather than constant observation.
Now,
There is one medium security institution specifically for men over the age of 21 in New York,
what is the name of that institution?
Wallkill.
And that is the only medium security institution in New York
Yes,
for
sir,
men
it
over
is.
21. Now, what about minimum security institutions? Are there any in New York State from adult males 21 or older?
Yes, there are, and they're indicated on our maps by our dots. As you can see, there are 4 such institutions: Elmira, Coxsackie, Catskill, and Wallkill.
Those are the medium security institutions that you were referring to?
Yes, they are, I'm sorry.
And the minimum security institutions are what?
Minimum security institutions are located in this area:
And what are their names?
Camp Georgetown, Camp Summit, Camp Faucilia.
Now, you call them camps. These are work camps for men,
These are work camps.
such as forestry camps?
Yes, they are. Inmates at these institutions are not confined to the institution's security area, and inmates are given only adequate supervision as compared with the frequent supervision at the medium security institution and the constant supervision at the maximum security institution.
Mr. Addison, would you point out with your pointer and give the names of the maximum security institutions in New York?